You're listening to the Spandex Power Armor Podcast. Never short of things to complain about.
Hello, and welcome back to this episode of Spandex Power Armor. This episode, we are taking my interpretation of Tokusatsu to its most liberal, extreme. That being anything that has any kind of special effects or explosions or suits, and we're doing it on Doctor Who.
You hear that? That's the weeaboos screaming for our blood.
It's technically Tokusatsu.
Technically,
you want to know something else? Anime also just means cartoon in Japanese, so you want to suck on that. This episode we are going to talk about the second ever serial of Doctor Who, The Daleks, which is perhaps one of, if not the most important Doctor Who story ever, even more so than the first one, because the first one almost got it cancelled.
Wow. Yeah, this story is so important because it introduced the scariest salt and pepper shakers in the world. So scary that I think it coined a term during the 70s or so about hiding behind the sofa when the Daleks come out, because they were scary at the time.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because this is just a thing that has been niggling in the back of my mind since I first kind of heard of that whole hiding behind the sofa thing. Did people do that?
Because it's like some sort of collective memory.
Yeah, it's a collective memory, but I've never seen any proper evidence of it. Like, is that just a thing people say? Like, I love you? It doesn't really happen. It doesn't really have any bearing on reality. They just say it to make you feel better.
Post-breakup 2019 me would agree with you, but no, I'm thinking that it was a thing. It's a thing that kids do. Obviously, it's not something that would happen nowadays. But back then, when
with our generation of hardened, badass children.
Yeah, when people were a bit more easily spooked, and especially because the Daleks were quite scary.
Because I wasn't there, I'm not properly aware of kind of cultural norms and how things were back then on account of the fact that I wasn't there. But it just kind of, I don't know, it's one of those things where I find it hard to get my head into that headspace where a Dalek would legitimately scare me. Like, the implications of a Dalek existing in real life, yes, I would be scared if I met a Dalek in real life and it was real and it was there. I'd be scared, but seeing one on my, TV,
You must have been a very unimaginative child. It's quite a vivid thing. It's like, oh no, the Daleks are coming in. The Doctor could get zapped. What the hell's that sucker thing for?
Right, but I was also fictionally literate. I knew that the main character wasn't going to, die partway through, I mean, that does happen sometimes, but not very often.
Looking back at the old Dalek designs, I can totally see why they were quite scary, especially during was it either the 70s or 80s where they had that sort of pupil thing on the eye stalk.
You mean like just a little black dot in the middle?
Yeah. That's quite unnerving.
Yeah, just on the subject of Dalek designs, I mean, we can both agree that the Imperial Daleks from, the 80s era was best, right? The white and gold ones.
Oh, they were pimpin'.
Oh,
they were amazing-looking Daleks.
Everything, like ivory and golden Daleks, just inspired.
What was your thought on the Dalek design when they brought it back? I thought it was quite classy.
Get rid of the rivets, and I'm absolutely down to clown 100%. Not that the rivets are a particularly big deal breaker. It's just like if I had to have a niggle, it would be that. I guess the colour as well. Bronze is fine, but I like silver and blue.
Oh, come on. You got to go for a little sci-fi art deco.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. It is not a bad design. If the way they brought the Daleks back was flawless in absolutely every single way that matters, it's just me being a nitpicker.
This episode's going to be nothing but nitpicking, especially when we start comparing this classic to the later iterations of
this
the
would be a
Doctor.
perfect opportunity for me to establish myself that I'm not just 100%, boomer. Like, I can criticize old things too. So this will be good for me. This will be a nice exercise in criticizing stuff from the 60s.
The first serial with the Daleks was pretty early into the initial run of Doctor Who. I think it followed the first arc where they introduced all the characters. So you've got the Doctor, you've got Susan, you've got the first companions. And so it's still fairly early in the development for these characters, and the writers weren't aware at the time how much of an impact this show was going to have. I'm glad that they didn't dump the footage like they did with so much old stuff.
No, poor Patrick Troughton. A load of his library was just. The only reason we have some of it is because they kind of copied it and sent it overseas to be to be broadcast there. I think we got a bunch of
Wow.
it from Hong Kong. Like no one was expecting that. We've got the audio from everything though. Was it? I think maybe Marco Polo. It was mostly lost though, including the audio. I could be wrong on that one. But no, the audio for a lot of stuff was kept because you got people recording it at home to be able to listen back to it. Like they didn't have VHSs, let alone VHS recorders or anything like that. So they'd record the audio and listen back to it as like an unnarrated audio play, basically.
Not all heroes wear capes. Wow.
Yeah, I know. That's the only reason we've got an archive of some episodes. It's amazing. Cosgrove Hall have been commissioned to kind of reanimate, go back and reanimate them, and it's fine, but it's low budget Cosgrove Hall animation. It's not much better than the webcasts they did of like Scream of the Schalke or Sharda, unfortunately.
That's a shame.
But as you mentioned, this is incredibly early on in the Doctor. Like I said, it was the second serial they did after An Unearthly Child, so it carries on immediately after that, and these characters are still very new, and I just love it. So before we get too embedded in the going through the plot and going through the character dynamics, I just want to give a bit of background, details on it. So it stars William Hartnell as the Doctor, the first character to play that role, and he's got a very. I think you. How familiar were you before you watched the Daleks with kind of classic, especially first Doctor, Doctor Who?
Not much. I think in terms of Hartnell, I may have watched this initial Daleks one ages ago. I'm more familiar with Troughton. I'd watched some of the stuff with the Cybermen. So I'm more familiar with the second, third, fourth Doctor than the rest of the classics.
So what did you make of William Hartnell compared to some of the later ones?
I like seeing the initial plan for the Doctor's personality. He was very much an old man who was really just doing it all for himself. And he just was... Well, I know that's the thing that is true with some other incarnations. But for this, it was definitely an old man who is very prone to mistakes.
Yeah. I absolutely adore William Hartnell, and I agree he's definitely very kind of... He's not as infallible or... What's what I'm looking for? He's not hyper competent as he's come to be now. He is... Obviously, they hadn't properly fleshed out his whole backstory. He was still meant to be quite mysterious, and I'm not... No, they did intend from day one for him to be an alien, I'm pretty sure.
He's
But
downright selfish at times. Even during this serial, he gets people to come into the Dalek city with him just because he wanted to have a look around, under the pretense of them needing something from it.
Yep, I like the first Doctor because he is in many ways quite immature. Because he is the youngest Doctor, and the timeless child can just go hang. I will not. Anyway, he is the youngest incarnation of the Doctor that matters. And so, compared to his older ones, he can come across as quite graceless and immature. And that was absolutely not the plan, because they only came up with regeneration when it came time. When it came time to think about it with the 10th planet. It's just one of those things that it's just one of those happy little accidents, I guess, that you can kind of fit it into the retroactive lore of the series.
Yeah. Frankly, this lore is very malleable. You can do whatever the hell you want to retcon as much as you like.
Okay, but just because you can, that doesn't mean you should, Chibnall. It doesn't mean you should. So, starring alongside William Hartnell is William Russell, who plays Ian Chesterton. He's you know what? I've completely blanked. He's a science... Was he the history teacher? Ian and Barbara were both teachers. One did history, one did science. I can never remember which one did which. But that was to tie in with the kind of the theme of the show. It was originally meant to be an educational show, and so the Doctor would transport them from location to location, and depending on where they'd go, if they were in the past or the future, it would be teaching them basic scientific or historical stuff.
So
And
that's
Ian
like a
and Barbara.
slightly more dangerous The Magic School Bus.
Are you saying that the Magic School Bus wasn't dangerous? A child died, or very nearly died. So yeah, Ian and Barbara would be there to kind of provide input based on their respective fields of expertise, and Susan was there to be lectured to, basically.
Kind of makes sense, especially because this was early days for television programming.
William Russell, not Hartnell. Why were they both called William? Why would you do this to me? Names.
There can only be one William existing in the universe at any time to prevent confusion. This is
That's why anytime
yeah.
I come across another Joe, I immediately slaughter them without mercy. There can be only one. Highlander taught me this, all right? I learned it from TV, okay? William Russell was cast. They wanted a more kind of spry, younger man, but not so young that he wasn't also seen as a kind of an authority figure as well, to kind of handle the heavy lifting on account of the fact that William Hartnell was cast as a very elderly and, learned man rather than.
And you can't have a woman do any physical tasks in the 60s, no.
Now, funny you should mention that. Caroline Ford believed that was the kind of role she would get as the companion. She was told it would be more kind of action oriented. She'd be allowed to hold her own, and then she just wasn't able to.
Oh man, that sucks.
Oh, that sucks. But William Russell was fairly well known before that. He had roles in The Great Escape, The Man Who Never Was. He had a very minor role in Superman, 1978. He was also known in the US in the TV show The Adventures of Sir Lancelot. And Jacqueline Hill played Barbara. I really like these characters. I don't think they get enough credit. This is just a little pet peeve of mine. People don't give Ian and Barb enough recognition, I guess, is the word I'm looking for how they mellowed and shaped the Doctor's character from there forwards. I'm going to ignore the retcon in the Seventh Doctor. I can never remember which one it is. Revelation or some R words in the nation of the Daleks, where the Doctor went back to hide the hand of Omega. There, I don't care for that being all part of his plan. The Doctor originally was on Earth just to be on Earth. He had no initial kind of ties to this planet. He had no real love of it, and it was the influence of Ian and Barbara that kind of made him fall in love with humanity after that. And I don't think people. I don't know. I like Ian and Barbara, and I want everyone else to love Ian and Barbara as well. Damn it! Accept my opinion as fact and gospel. And rounding out our what would it be? Quartet? Yeah, quartet is the word I'm looking for. Is Caroline Ford as the Doctor's granddaughter, Susan Foreman. Foreman isn't her surname. She just got it from the from the junkyard they landed in, and I don't even think Susan is a real name either, because that'd be a weird name for an alien.
Oh, okay, so Womble's rules.
Yep. She's the titular unearthly child from the first serial, and she continues to be the designated damsel in distress from here forwards until she leaves in the Dalek invasion of Earth. I feel so bad for her, because I like Susan as a character, and she had so much more potential if they'd let her do what she thought she was going to be able to do, which was just, I don't know, someone a bit more confident and who could kind of hold. I don't think they promised her like an action role, but they certainly didn't tell her that she was going to be shrieking grandfather every third word,
It was the 60s. That's just the unfortunate side effect of it.
This is a perfect opportunity for a little segue I was hoping I'd be able to do. You say that, however, the producer of Doctor Who was Verity Lambert, one of, if not the first producer at the BBC at the time. You would think, I guess there's a lot of kind of cultural expectations, but you would have thought.
Surprised it didn't go whole hog and give the TARDIS a kitchen.
Well, it does. Probably.
Well, it's got a little dinky food generator thing.
Oh, yeah, but it probably has a proper kitchen somewhere.
Just stick Susan and Barbara in the TARDIS's kitchen. Any shot of them in the TARDIS, they're just in the kitchen.
It's like that, what was it, that Connect 4 box where you got the dad and the son playing a game while the daughter and mother are in the kitchen, smiling on benevolently as they wash the dishes. It's amazing how casual that stuff was. Like, you didn't need to include those two on that box. Why did you?
It was a really bizarre time for marketing and representation. I quite liked Susan in the Daleks one. She was always there to be the... Is the correct term wild card? Because she was bright and occasionally was insightful.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, wildcard and Susan are not the two words I associate with it. You. Sorry, I immediately got a flash of that episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia where Charlie is designated the wild card. I just
Tries to blow everything up.
So it's not the Doctor, it's Susan who takes out the fluid link in the TARDIS and she just jumps out the doors
Wild
shouting
card,
wild cards. Oh man, if anyone hasn't seen that episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, we're going to sound like a bunch of loons. Watch It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. It's funny. That's my short little mini review of Always Sunny. It's fun. It makes me do the big lol. The next person, well, the last person really we need to talk about who kind of contributed to this iconic bit of British. I should not supplement the two. This British icon and institution is Terry Nation, who created the Daleks and continues to own them somehow. I don't know how the BBC don't own the trademark for the Dalek.
Does he really?
Oh, no, yeah. Well, I mean, he doesn't anymore. He came down with a dire case of death in 1997. But the Terry Nation estate continues to own the Daleks to this very day.
Wow. So do they actually need to get permission for each appearance? Does that mean that they can do whatever the hell they want with it? They can include it in other things? And wow.
Well, yeah, that's how we got the two Peter Cushing Dalek movies. The first of which adapts this TV story. He really wanted to make a Dalek TV series, which would have been interesting. Terry Nation, he used to write for Tony Hancock apparently as well. I was watching a feature. The DVDs for the classic Doctor Who are fantastic. Like, they always have at least one little mini documentary on the making of it, a commentary track from at least one cast member, and like some production crew. They do really good releases. One of them, they mentioned that Terry Nation was still working for Tony Hancock, who I absolutely adore and is a personal kind of inspiration of mine, except for how that particular story ended. That's not inspiring at all. But no, he got the request to write for Doctor Who, and at the time it was it was seen as a kids show basically. And he went to Tony Hancock about it, and they were just kind of like, oh yeah, they want me to write a kids show. And then later on, Tony Hancock fired him, and he went crawling back to the BBC asking very nicely if they wouldn't mind letting him write that Doctor Who episode after all.
If he's going to write for kids, he's going to scare them behind the sofa.
It's shocking that he managed to make something so iconic. Not that he wasn't capable, but he just, from someone who was so kind of reluctant to do it, to make something so massive. I mean, we kind of forget these days, but Dalek Mania was huge in the 60s.
Dalek Mania.
That's what it's called, Dalek Mania.
Was that an actual cultural phenomenon that happened?
Yes. I'm not kidding. Dalek Mania is the official word for it, and it was a big old thing.
Well, I can totally see it's a very toyetic design, pretty simple, easy to market.
True, but this was before toyetic-ness. Like, I'm pretty sure the only Doctor Who toys for ages would have been Daleks.
Well, they're present in the zeitgeist. When you mention Doctor Who to anyone, the first thing that's going to come to their mind is, oh yeah, Daleks.
Mm-hmm.
It's just one of those things. And so, yeah, I can totally see why Dalek Mania would have happened.
I just don't like the word. Dalek Mania doesn't really kind of roll off my tongue as well as some other words do. Oh well.
Just trying to think of some alternatives.
Yeah, no, there are really no alternatives, are there? Dalek Mania is really the best we can do with this kind of thing, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. I'm just seriously sitting here scratching my head. I mean, yeah, Dalek Mania, that's just a perfect thing to stick on the end. Yeah. Dalek-geddon? No?
No.
This is why I don't work in marketing.
So that's our kind of behind the scenes. Well, I say behind the scenes. We just name dropped a few people and I waffled on them. Them some of the big names who contributed to making this what it is. Now we can talk about the fun stuff. What actually happens in this, well, we can't really say episode, serial, story arc, that kind of thing.
A whole lot of fannying about with some nice Dalek scenes in between.
Yeah, okay, cool. Elephant in the room. Old Doctor Who is paced like... Oh, it isn't paced. You will get some really good stuff early on and some really good stuff at the end, and then a whole lot of nothing in the middle. The first episode of An Unearthly Child, fantastic. And then as soon as you go to the caveman time period, whatever, I can't remember when it was exactly, it really kind of drags because cavemen aren't fun. Caves aren't engaging. Cavemen, they just want fire, and they have to work out whether or not they should give them fire. It's just not engaging. Just watch the first episode and be done with it. Maybe borrow the last episode.
Cave sets are cheap. So are quarries in Wales. That's the reason why the pacing is absolutely glacial. It's the budget. It's unfortunate,
Yes.
but it also means they get to innovate every now and then.
Yeah, so for those of you who aren't kind of that well versed in Doctor Who, in the classic series you wouldn't get like one 45-minute episode or maybe two 45-minute episodes to tell a story like you do these days. What you would get is, to begin with, it was like the Daleks was 7 episodes, each 25 minutes long. It was kind of roughly about that. I think the War Games was 10 episodes long. I think that's one of the longest ones they did. Yeah, no, War Games is fantastic. It is absolutely great, but it is long as hell. So they'd stretch the stories out for that long to, well, stretch their budgets out as long as possible. They would make their sets, they'd make the costumes, they'd hire their actors, they'd work out the makeups, the special effects, and then they would just use them as much as is tolerable before making the next one, which is totally fine, and it worked. And when you're watching these things once a week, it's not that much of it's not that big a deal. You're watching this once a week. You're not binge watching it like we did. When you binge watch it, it sucks. When you're watching it once a week, it's pretty all right.
Yeah, it's horrible when you binge watch it. Didn't we watch The Silurians one hungover morning?
Oh, no. Yeah, no, The Silurians...
I don't think we ever finished it. Mentally, I'm still there. I'm still watching just people talking in a room.
Mead? I think it was mead. Maybe ginger wine. Knowing us, probably both.
Could have been ginger wine.
We have weird tastes in booze.
I know I had a stinking headache. And how many episodes was The Silurians?
I will check for us. Because it feels
enough to stick
like...
on one DVD.
Let's have a look-see.
Now that was heavy on the filler.
Right, let's have a look-see. Doctor Who and the Silurians. Where is the episode list? 7 episodes, 25 minutes each. Exactly as long as Doctor Who and the Daleks. And yet, it feels so much longer. I maintain that most classic Doctor Who serials can be re-edited down into something more akin to a feature-length thing, or maybe like 2...
Definitely, you can strip away so many B-plots and just focus on the meat. And you can make something entertaining, that would be a nice project, actually. You can make something that you can actually show kids and they won't get bored about.
Yeah. An issue I have, and I know a lot of other classic Doctor Who fans have, is that it's very hard to share classic Doctor Who with non-fans.
It's a bit of a slow burn.
Yeah, there's a massive hurdle to get over. Because you can get some really, really, really good stuff. Like Genesis of the Daleks, really good. Also, it's a classic Doctor Who serial. It's lengthy. Of course, you could always show them something a bit more condensed, like the Doctor Who TV movie. Everyone's favourite.
I can only vaguely recall that.
Do you remember who else is in it? Eric Roberts.
Really?
Eric Roberts plays the Master.
Oh, wow.
Yep. Further cementing in my mind the fact that Eric Roberts will do anything as long as some form of money is involved. Do you want to know what else he's been in?
Do tell.
A talking cat! Exclamation point, question mark.
I think the correct pronunciation of the title is A Talking Cat?
Yeah. I just didn't want to give it any more effort than it warrants, which is no effort.
Well, I mean, if you like money, you can definitely starring a talking cat. Yeah.
I hate that movie, and I hate the director behind it, but that is a tangent for another day because I will rant at length
I'm
about
now
that
Googling
man.
a talking... Wait, do you hate a talking cat or do you hate the Doctor Who movie?
Oh, no, I like the Doctor Who movie. It is an absolute guilty pleasure. I just hate the director of a talking cat! Exclamation mark. Question mark.
Ah, no, I'm Googling it now. It's actually a talking cat! Exclamation mark, question mark, exclamation mark.
You see, that's how deep my apathy goes.
You missed out the final piece of punctuation.
Yeah, no, it's for those of you who don't know, it's a movie by David Dakota, and I hate that man so much. Actually, maybe I should explain this. He is known for doing what's the most polite way of putting this? Softcore homoerotic erotica. Now, I don't hate him because of that. If you want to produce that, if that is what you want to create, it is no business of mine. It's not my thing, but I do not. Okay, look, I don't like him because he made a movie called Bigfoot versus DB Cooper. Okay? Now, that is a
Oh!
fantastic idea for a film. You can make a really, 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 really good, really schlocky Predator ripoff, okay? Because you've got DB Cooper, who has like a couple of grand and potentially a bomb in a briefcase in the middle of the woods, and also Bigfoot. If you have Bigfoot tracking down DB Cooper and trying to kill him, and DB Cooper fighting for his life, and all he has to defend himself is a sharp suit, a parachute, some money, and a bomb, that'd be fantastic. But that's not what it is at all. It's a bunch of twunks running around the forest shirtless and changing their shorts. And
Okay.
I
That
hate
is,
them.
that is incredibly odd as a guise for something softcore.
I know. It didn't have to be that way. He could have just made some normal. He could have just made some normal stuff. Just like they're there on a hunting trip, right? Just have a hunting trip movie. You don't have to include something as badass as Bigfoot versus DB Cooper.
That sounds like a completely different movie. I'm looking at his
It should.
filmography, and surely you can. His earlier stuff was a bit less subtle, like Sorority Babes in the Slimeball Ballerama,
I know.
or Beach
Again, he has
Babes from
these.
Beyond,
Yeah, these are all
Test
fantastic
Tube Teens
ideas.
from the year 2000.
What part of that does not sound great? Like, don't get me wrong. Something like Test Tube Babes from Yada Yada, or Sorority Babes in the Slimeball Ballerama. Yeah, that absolutely should be some weird smut stuff. But Bigfoot versus DB Cooper should be more, and it never will be anymore.
I'm surprised that a talking cat! Exclamation mark, question mark, exclamation mark. Doesn't include more topless guys.
Oh, it includes two.
Does it? Have you?
Yeah.
I love how you have that info.
Oh, yeah. Well, look, David Dakota is my nemesis. I need to know these things about him.
You've got a big enemy list, haven't you?
And if you ask any more questions, you'll also make that list. I hate David Dakota. Anyway, I shall lock that particular psychosis away back in the trunk in the back of my mind for now. One
Is
day there'll be
Bigfoot
a day
versus
of
DB
reckoning.
Cooper tokusatsu? Technically,
No, I mean it's got a suit.
it's a bit of a stretch.
Oh, incredibly a stretch. Anyway, Doctor Who. That's something I like. Something. Well, not anymore. Thanks, Chibbers. That's something I can like. And oh, I hate the fact that I have to add that qualifier. Doctor and the Daleks is good. There. Review over. Goodbye, everybody. So, did we actually get anywhere on the plot synopsis, or were we just fanning
No,
about
we
the
haven't even
structure
gotten
of
to the
it?
plot. We
Okay.
yeah.
Plot synopsis. The Doctor and co get to Skaro. Oh, that rhymed. They weren't meant to go there. The Doctor just kind of doesn't like going where he's meant to. He purposefully just doesn't read the directions properly. Is basically what Susan said. He just kind of lets things go.
Now he's
He
the
finds
wild
it more
card. I take
interesting.
it back.
Yeah, there we go. I can see the Doctor saying wild card in some contexts.
Screaming wild card bitches, then the sound of the TARDIS's engine.
So yeah, no, they land on Skaro, and I think Ian and Barb were kind of expecting to be returned to 1963 London. And when you get to a post-apocalyptic hellscape, you could be forgiven. You could be forgiven for them, kind of initially thinking that they were back in London. It is the south of England after all.
You're not, dude. We're in the Midlands. Stop going full north on us.
Yeah, look, just because you're from the Midlands doesn't mean I have to act like it. So yeah, they get there and they kind of stumble through a petrified jungle, which is not jungle, forest, two different biomes. It's nice. I really like the idea of a petrified forest as the result of some horrifying cataclysm. I've also got like a petrified animal and stuff like that. It's a nice little set piece, and they stumble upon a city in the distance, and the Doctor decides that above all else, he really, really wants to check out that city at everyone else's expense. Damn the consequences! He is going to go to that city.
It's big and it's shiny.
Yes, well, he is an old man after all. He's probably not all there. Bless him. To the point where he will sabotage the TARDIS to convince them to go, to pop around the corner and ask them very kindly for a cup of mercury. But of course, going there introduces us to the Daleks. Now, even if you're not a fan of Doctor, you know what the Daleks are. We've gone over this. Big bad pepper pots with an egg whisk on one side and a sink plunger on the other.
Was it actually an egg whisk for the original?
No. It just kind of looks like it. I'm being facetious.
Yeah. There's always one thing that interests me. Like, in the really old Dalek designs, they had like a moving component to the gun.
Oh, kind of shoots out. Yeah.
Yeah, he just like flashes out.
It's because they hadn't made like the beam rotoscope out of it yet, so they needed to show not only which Dalek was shooting, but that it was shooting.
Oh, that's
and having something poke out would do that. I'm assuming. I do not know for sure, but that follows. That's why they put the little light bulbs on the top to show which Dalek was talking, so the actors would know who to look at and who to react to. It's also the reason why the Daleks kind of shuffle about when they're talking, just to add a bit of a bit of dynamic movement in there. Otherwise, it's just some novelty cupboards standing around. One thing I found was... Oh, actually, no, we need to keep going on the pod sums. We keep getting sidetracked. So, wrestling my train of thought back on track to the brief plot synopsis. They go to the Dalek City. They ask them very nicely if they wouldn't mind parting with some mercury, and they end up getting kidnapped. And when they get to the city, it's... The ending of that first episode is one of, if not the most famous kind of cliffhangers in Doctor Who, and Doctor Who's known for its decent cliffhangers. It's Barbara is trapped and is looking around, and then she looks at the camera and reacts to something horrible just seen off screen, and I'm pretty sure you can see like a plunger come into view, and then she just kind of starts screaming, and then wah, 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 and then the Doctor Who's theme starts coming in. Absolutely iconic.
That was at the end of the first one, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm trying to recall now because the pacing was so slow. I'm thinking, now was that the first episode? Did they manage to did they manage to pack that in so they could have two sets at once, or did they delay it long enough to last two episodes?
Now, thankfully, that was the first episode. The first episode is pretty decently paced, actually. The first two episodes are pretty decent, actually, and then things kind of start to drag out in the middle. So we were introduced to the Daleks as they kind of capture our protagonists, and they keep them in a holding cell, and they're trying to figure out why they're there, because at this point Daleks aren't aware of aliens, other worlds, and space travel and junk like that. So they're assuming that they're remnants of the other race of Skaro called the Thals, who should have. If they have survived, rather, they reason that they should have some kind of immunity to the radiation poisoning their world, which is currently poisoning our protagonists. And so they're wondering why these bods here if they can survive independently. Now, we previously saw evidence of the Thals as they left a box of drugs for the guys. And one of them also tried to speak to Susan before scaring her off like a frightened deer. So by this point, there's like a decent amount of back and forth. They send Susan out to get the drugs, and she meets up with the Thals, and they give her the skinny on what exactly the haps is with Skaro. She takes the drugs back. The Daleks allow them to get their fix and stop dying of radiation poisoning. And then they get Susan to write a letter to the Thals, and then they get the Thals to go to the city And then they ambush the Thals and kill their leader. Then the Thals retreat, and then the Doctor and his bunch escape, meet up with the Thals, and then they try and go back to it. Like I said, there's a lot of back and forth, and this is where your fanning about came into play. In that there is a very simple story here where if they was done more efficiently, the Thals would come and be ambushed, and in the ensuing chaos, the TARDIS crew would escape, regroup with the Thals, and then plan their kind of assault on the Dalek city, and it would be so much cleaner. But it wasn't. It was back and forth, reusing all the sets they built because, god damn it, they're going to get their money's worth.
You could strip so many subplots from that.
Speaking of their money's worth, the 4 Daleks cost £260, I think, to make. I have no idea what that is in today's money. I'm not calculating that like I did last time. But it probably was more then than it is now. Man, if I went back in time, I could make several Daleks with the money I've got. Knowing that adds nothing to my life. So the plot is not the deepest, but it has some pretty decent themes that I picked up on. And some not conflicting ones, but some surprisingly grey ones for what was meant to be an educational family show. For example, so there's definitely a kind of kind of anti-war message. Clearly, Skaro is the result of a cataclysmic genocidal battle between two peoples.
Oh, definitely.
There is a kind of anti-nuclear thing as well, because the ever-present radiation hanging over the protagonist's heads in the first couple of episodes. But then there's also this kind of grey take on pacifism. The Thals are absolute pacifists initially, and what's the best way of how do I want to word this? Initially, one of the other Thals is kind of skeptical of the Daleks' intentions, inviting them into the city, and they still go along with it, but he voices doubts, and even though everyone else is like, yes, let's hope for peace, let's trust the Daleks, and I found that interesting that they didn't just go for a clear cut, assume the best of people, strive for hope, strive for peace, all that kind of thing. There was like, yeah, hope for peace, but also, sometimes just people aren't great, and you gotta anticipate that, which I appreciated. It's kind of this measured pacifism. What was it? Speak softly and carry a big stick.
Sometimes you just need to ice somebody to keep the peace.
Basically, yeah. Fortunately, these people aren't exactly people. They are little. Oh, what's that shellfish I keep saying they look like? Cockles. They look like cockles in pepper pots. So you can pretty easily dehumanize them.
You can't see their real eyes, it's fine.
I don't even think Dalek mutants should have eyes. I'm just going to go out there. I don't think they should have eyeballs. They should be completely vestigial blobs of flesh that are wired into their machines permanently. I do not like the modern interpretation of them as being squids. They should just be flesh. Again, I have some really weird nitpicks. This doesn't really lessen or cheapen their impact. I do not know why I have these opinions.
The only sight of a Dalek mutant we had in this serial was, I think it's some bloke wearing a glove just under the... Was it a blanket, or it was a rug or something?
Cloak.
It's a cloak, yes. Wow, you don't see cloaks anymore. It's just, under a cloak. You just see it's like a little hand or something. Just a little bit of movement.
Tangent. People should bring back cloaks and capes. The biggest mistake we've made as a society is abandoning that particular aspect of fashion. Okay? We should bring back cloaks and capes. Thank you for listening to my TED Talk, everyone. I know, I appreciate the themes. There's also a kind of an anti-racist take here, because the Thals are unable to comprehend why the Daleks just hate them and will not work with them and will not tolerate their existence. And Ian described it as a dislike for the unlike. And I thought that the Dalek xenophobia in this episode was very... what's the word? Realistic, if slightly... Why do words escape me? More amplified than you would find in reality, usually. I say usually because, the Nazis kind of set the bar when it came to xenophobia.
Well, you've got to exaggerate a little. That's how you
True.
get the message across.
I mean, these are very clearly Nazi stand-ins, by the way. I mean, I probably should have said that earlier, but I kind of thought it went without saying, but I should probably say it at some point. I recognise the fact that the Daleks are meant to be Nazis. I'm not that illiterate. So the Daleks are not as kind of kill 'em all, shoot on sight, exterminate. I think they only say exterminate like twice in this episode. They
Yeah.
take the TARDIS crew in, and then they use. It's not that the Daleks will not use not lesser beings, what they see as lesser beings for their own ends, but they do not shoot them on sight, as you would expect more modern ones to do, especially since this is the first time, production-wise, that they've seen the Doctor. Their hatred of the Thals is more realistically based, like Ian said, a dislike for the unlike. The Thals are completely different life forms to them, and so they no longer recognize them as being like them and just do not want them. They kind of see themselves as singular upon that rock called Skaro. And they're not. I don't know. Maybe it's the fact that the scope of their xenophobia is localized entirely within that planet, rather than like on a galactic or universal scale, as subsequent episodes or stories would show them to be.
Definitely. Their motives are a little more practical in this serial, as their main reason for wiping out the Thals is purely for the survival of the Daleks. Previously, they didn't really care about them until... Actually, they did. I take that back, because they were trying to steal the Thals' drugs to survive all the radiation damage. Then they found out, oh no, actually, we need the radiation to survive. Let's nuke the planet.
And I think that bit. I mean, we give the Daleks a bad rep, but that's pretty reasonable. Haven't we all stolen our neighbours' drugs just to, survive? Again, it's weird. The word I keep thinking of is reasonable. It is absolutely not reasonable, but it is reasonable to assume. It is reasonable to believe, is what I'm saying, that a group would get like that. It is not a reason. Unfortunately, I kind of feel like I have to specify what I mean by reasonable. I find it reasonable to believe that they could exist, not that their, beliefs are reasonable. Absolutely, they're not. It's kind of interesting that the object of the xenophobic, totalitarian, collectivist community, is Aya, is a community of Aryan Chads and Stacys. I'm sure that was done with irony, probably. Like the people who were... discrimination isn't quite the right word. The target of this kind of renewed genocide appear to be the standard of the last... Well, I say last. By that point, the most recent kind of attempted genocide. Their side's kind of ideal of what should be preserved and striven for. Strived. One of those words was probably right. I mean, again, that's... I don't know. Is that tasteless? I don't know.
It was the 60s.
Loads of things were tasteless back in the 60s. Like the fact they used to put gelatin and stuff. No, stuff in gelatin.
Oh, yes.
Remember
What's
that?
the term? Aspic.
Aspic, yeah. Have you seen those cookbooks? There were whole cookbooks for things that you could shove in gelatin.
I know there are some communities on the internet who are just like, you know what, let's stick random things in aspic. Like, there's this one that's just full of dentures.
Yeah, right, but that's for giggles. This is for actual eating and human consumption.
Post-war English food was not good.
They did in the US as well.
That's because Americans had no
generally
culture. At that time, they were blindly looking for something they could make their own. We're like, does this work? I don't know.
And then they saw Vietnam. As far as the kind of cultural impact of Doctor Who, the Daleks goes, I mean, I know I've been calling it Doctor Who and the Daleks, but that is absolutely wrong. It's Doctor Who, the Daleks, because Doctor Who and the Daleks was the first Peter Cushing movie,
colon.
and this... No!
You
Okay,
fool.
so this series was originally going to be called The Mutants, and I think that was absolutely much better as the title, because both the Thals, in their, alpha Chad perfection, are mutants, as well as the Daleks. I think they mentioned that weirdly enough, the Thals kind of looped back around in some weird kind of horseshoe evolutionary thing where they go through this weird subhuman mutation phase and then they just came out as perfect again.
I don't quite recall
The
that.
Daleks just never did.
I know it's
No,
only
no,
been
they
like
absolutely
500
did.
years.
I thought they said it was.
I'm
not sure they gave a specific time frame,
like 500 years.
but they did mention. Blimey,
I'm on Wikia now.
that's
Fight
a
me.
lot of evolution. Fine then, I bow to your superior knowledge.
Yep, 500 years. There was a great big neutron bomb war. Thals were chucking bombs at
Fair enough.
Daleks, and yeah, I mean, you'd kind of want to wipe out the people who chucked bombs at you and made you all mutants.
Probably, yeah.
Especially if they survived the bomb and they just turned into a race of alpha chads. I'd want to exterminate them too.
Oh no, does this mean the Daleks are incels?
Yes. I want a Pepe
Hemoid
mutant.
detected. Oh no, Davros is just sat in his little wheelie chair, bemoaning his substandard like jawline.
Yeah, they're really highly
Stacy
black
shall
pilled.
never love me. I shall create a race of super beings in my image, in the image of the black pill.
Any women that they kidnap are put into giant jars.
Oh, me oh my. Speaking of Davros, yeah, his stories are generally pretty good. One of the first lots of Doctor Who DVDs I got was the limited edition Davros collection they did, and it is fantastic. If you can somehow pick it up, I would highly recommend it. It includes every episode of the classic series that involves Davros, and at that point, all the audio stories that featured him as well, including a series I like called I Davros, where it completely outlines his origins and where he came from. Screw modern Doctor Who and their retconnings of things.
Ooh.
I Davros is canon. It's this kind of like half of it. He isn't even like crippled or anything like that. It's just normal Khaled Davros. Oh yeah, before they became Daleks, the Daleks are called Khaleds. It's Dalek spelled backwards.
It's the Nilbog rule.
Genius.
It's always so subtle.
Nilbog. That's Goblin spelled backwards. But yeah, no, it's really good. It shows how Davros has just been an absolute legitimate 100% diagnosable psychopath from day one. It also, it just shows what Khaled culture was like, before it was no longer a culture, which is Nazi Germany. Just Nazi Germany. You've seen Genesis of the Daleks, and yeah, you know what you're getting in for. Everyone dresses like they're in the SS.
You know what really gets on my nerves? The fact that in the 6th episode of this serial, the penultimate episode, it was just Ian and some Thals fannying about in a cave. I know I keep on repeating that word, but that's the only thing that comes to mind. They're fannying about. That's the most painfully British thing I've ever said.
I think the inception of the aforementioned fannying started on the 5th episode too, so it's not even like it's just the entirety of one episode. It's like the end of one bleeding into the entirety of another.
They had to milk that set for all it's worth, I know that. But they could have done something a little more interesting than them just walking about the cave, occasionally falling over. They could have stuck a destroyed Dalek or something in there, or part of one. They built the prop. They could have worked something around that, added some action to it, rather than just pure fannying.
As I said earlier, the format for... Well, no, maybe not format. I mean, yes, format, but what's the word I'm looking for? The way we interact
Formula?
with... Maybe... I don't know, the way we interact with this kind of media has changed drastically over the last half century. As you would hope. It's been 50 years, coming to 55 or so. So whatever. It's been a long, long, long time. And back then you would watch one episode and then watch the next episode a week apart and then never watch it again until home media was invented. Alternately, later on you would start reading the novelizations, which again fixed pacing issues, blah blah blah. But what you were not meant to do is watch them all back to back in one afternoon before recording a podcast.
Yeah.
This is objectively the most the worst way to experience these stories is to binge watch them, because that's how we interact with media these days. It makes it feel, it lessens the experience. So yes, we are going to complain about it, fanning around, stalling for time. Any review of a classic Doctor Who episode, unless by some miracle pacing is ironed out across like 7 or 8 episodes. I mean, I was watching what's it called, The Pirate Planet by Douglas Adams, and even Douglas Adams wasn't able to fix pacing issues because of that. That's how the format works. That was the nature of the medium at the time.
Wow, I guess you're kind of right. So what we should do is, instead of binging them, what we'll do each week is get together and watch one episode of Doctor Who, and we'll try and dig up some old black and white CRT and hook that up to an HDMI so we get the authentic experience.
I know you're being facetious, but I'd really like that.
It sounds really fun. I've seen some guys do that. I've seen someone play Cuphead on it. And I'm thinking, yeah, that's nice and authentic.
Because it was the 60s. It was a very different time. Rationing was still a thing. Segregation was still a thing. We hadn't discovered colour yet, so the whole world was black and white. Oh, hang about. Wizard of Oz came out in the 30s and that had colour, and I keep forgetting that. I keep forgetting we had colour.
That was on a massive budget at the time.
Yes, you're right, but I keep forgetting we had the possibility, the technology to do that.
England was poor. We couldn't afford colour.
No. It's weird that Ultra Q was in black and white, but then Ultraman that came out the same year was in colour.
Same year?
Yeah, 66.
Nice. For some reason, I always thought Ultraman came out a little later. Ultra Q always felt like the prototype for this kind of tokusatsu thing.
Right, but no, same year. No, it was Ultra Q and Ultraman 66, and it was Ultra 7 in 67.
How apt.
I wonder what gave them the idea for the name.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense. I mean, at the time, a lot of people didn't own a colour TV, so it wasn't really much of a difference, really, if they were to watch.
At the time, a lot of people didn't own a TV.
They had to watch it from the windows of electronics shops.
Oh no, they rented them. You
Remember
could
renting
rent
stuff?
TVs. Rental TVs. I mean, that makes sense, but it's never been a factor or a thing in my life, so it makes it kind of hard for me to kind of wrap my head around, I guess, because I've always existed in a time where televisions have been affordable to most folks, and so the idea of renting one, I mean, hell, I think the only reason so many people, or so many TVs were available in the UK at the time was because of the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II.
Ah, true. Which was actually a plot point / monster in a Doctor Who episode.
Ah, yes.
That was a good one.
Which one was it? Oh, Idiot's Lantern, wasn't it?
Idiot's Lantern, I think so, yes.
I think that was, yeah. That was weird. Wow, what was the thing? She was... that was with the faceless people. She'd suck your face off through the TV to power her or something like that, or just to feed.
Yeah, it was a bit bizarre.
That was a bit
concept,
bizarre.
But it was nice and horror-themed and quintessentially British.
Man, Doctor Who used to be fun. I tried watching as much of the new stuff as I could, and I just... If they had a better actor like Olivia Colman, I would have been much more on board, but then the writing would still keep dragging it down.
I gave up midway through Tennant. I'm fine. I'm happy with everything up till that point. I'm just like, you know what? I'm good. I'll watch some of the older stuff.
I was having... What's the best way to word it? I was kind of half off during Matt Smith's run, and towards the end of David Tennant was when I was starting to get a bit iffy with how Doctor Who was getting, because I didn't like how constantly doughy-eyed David Tennant was getting, and the whole Time Lord Victorious thing rubbed me the wrong way, and then the whole I don't want to go thing, and I get it. I get that was Russell T Davies kind of speaking through the character that he created, and yes, Rusty absolutely deserved like a victory lap for resurrecting Doctor Who and making it more successful than ever. I just wish he hadn't done it in that way. It kind of cheapened everything for me. Matt Smith was not great. Peter Capaldi is a fantastic actor and former absolute massive fan of Doctor Who, and he got crap to work with. So I feel really bad for him.
I keep forgetting that he was the Doctor.
Apparently they can't get him back for an upcoming multi-Doctor story. Apparently that's the rumours.
Give me Capaldi and Eccleston in a room. And
Well, they'll never get Eccleston back.
Yeah, I loved Eccleston.
Shame.
He was
Eccleston
amazing.
was
He was the Doctor who was so distant from everyone. He was darker. He was angrier.
But not to the point of being unrealistic and unengaging, because they tried. So Chris Eccleston's Doctor is very clearly quite disturbed and cagey and trying to keep everything at arm's length through this veneer of cheery northern glibness. But anytime you kind of scratch that surface, anytime something knocks it, it immediately falls away, and you see this broken, damaged, shell-shocked veteran underneath.
Oh, his Time War PTSD was impressive.
They tried to do a similar kind of thing with Peter Capaldi, who's all like, Clara, am I a good man, Clara? But he'd just come off the tail end of knowing that he saved Gallifrey and didn't kill everyone. Why is it now that he's returning to being all kind of squirrely and cagey and stuff like that? That's what I didn't get about Peter Capaldi's Doctor, and part of the reason why I hated him so much is because he is the one that makes the least sense in terms of his demeanour. Like he absolutely shouldn't be as crotchety and grumpy as he is, because he regenerated knowing that he came off of just knowing that he'd saved everyone and that Gallifrey was safe and everything like that. And as a side note, he shouldn't be happy about saving Gallifrey. Gallifrey was horrible. Did we not watch Trial of a Time Lord? Right at the tail end, he gives the entire court a lecture on how horrific Time Lords are compared to Daleks and Cybermen. That's just another one of my little rants.
Yeah. All the way through classic Doctor Who. They were just riding his ass all the time.
At best, the Time Lords are upper-class, exclusionary dicks, bureaucrats, and at worst, they are underhanded, deceptive, genocidal maniacs. Just because humanity was discovering time travel, they uprooted the entire planet and moved it somewhere else, thus incinerating everything on the surface and making everything start again. That was, I think that was the first episode in the Trial of a Time Lord arc. They don't really talk about that much.
Yeah, that is pretty freaky.
And they hired an evil future version of the Doctor to come back and prosecute the current good version of the Doctor in exchange for giving future evil Doctor past good Doctors future regenerations. Again, they're never going to bring back the Valyard, unfortunately. That would have been great.
Wait, is this the one that was this at the end of Troughton's run?
No. This was Sixth Doctor's run.
Was that Baker?
Yeah.
Oh,
Colin
yes.
Baker, not Tom Baker.
It was A. Baker. I got that right. Ah, those curls.
I feel bad for Colin Baker. He got a real bum deal of it. He had like the shortest run aside from Eccleston. He was fired over the phone.
Oh no!
And then they asked him to come back to do the regeneration scene. He told him to get stuffed.
Yeah, that's completely understandable. Wow.
Yeah. But he got vindication in the audio dramas. They kind of managed to work with his character a bit more, make him a lot less abrasive. Gave him a new costume too, partway through. Cool. So he's no longer wearing a gorgeous Technicolor dream coat. It's
very much a product of its time.
No, it was not a product of its time. It was a product of John Nathan Turner being an absolute weirdo. I understand John Nathan Turner to some degree. We both love Hawaiian shirts and wear them exclusively. However, a patchwork quilt coat. JNT really liked costumes rather than clothes for his characters. Like the question mark tank top on Sylvester McCoy, the question mark everything, everywhere basically, on the lapels, on the handle of his umbrella, that kind of thing.
Wow.
He loved his branding. So we briefly touched on Christopher Eccleston, who, if you don't know, and it'd be weird that you didn't if you're this far into an episode about Doctor Who, but Christopher Eccleston was the actor who played the Doctor once Doctor Who came back from its... how long was the hiatus? It was 96, I think, was when the Doctor Who TV movie came out. So that would have been like, what, 19 years? No, that wouldn't have been 19 years. That would have been 9 years, right?
That's about 9 years.
Oh, cool. So yeah, I can
That
kind
was
of do maths.
2005. Wow, I feel old.
Yeah. And so to just a little brief comparison, because I haven't watched Dalek in a while, but I remember most of it because it is such a good episode. It's just nice to kind of
Oh, that
compare
was
where
amazing.
Daleks started and where Daleks kind of were brought back. And so instead of being trapped in a whole city that's meant to be ostensibly crawling with Daleks, and yet we only ever see 4 of them and a few paper cutouts, we have but one Dalek trapped in the underground labyrinth of, what was his name? Henry Van Staten, who owns the internet in the year of our Lord,
That's the one.
2012.
I think that was a perfect introduction of a Dalek, though, because it brings back the original horror aspect. It's enough to scare children, because everyone in that episode is running from it, trying to slow it down. It massacres a room full of people in seconds. You can't stop a Dalek. It's slow, it's inevitable, which is why I really hate the flying ones a few seasons later.
Meow, meow.
They
Yeah,
don't.
Daleks.
They aren't supposed to go neum. Even when they do, lift, they elevate. They do it slowly, watching you, like watching one go up the stairs.
Yeah, no, everyone thinks that Dalek is the one that first has Daleks floating, but it's actually the Sylvester McCoy episode that did that, way back in the 80s.
Oh, is that the one with the Imperials versus Rebels?
Yep.
Yeah.
Man, I really love those designs. Just so good. Everything about them is so good. And the special weapons Dalek is just... I love it. I love it so much. It's a
Let's
big
stick
old cannon.
gun on it.
So yeah, no, it's basically the Doctor picks up a distress signal and goes to investigate it. You would think he would recognise a Dalek signal, but apparently he doesn't. So the TARDIS materialises in the collection. He sees like a second Doctor Cyberman helmet, and he's all like, "Oh, I remember that. The classic series is canon now, everyone." And then they get captured,
Yay.
and he. I can't remember how it happens, but they end up shoving him in the same cell as the Dalek, which
Oh, yeah.
Van Staten's calling the Metaltron, and you don't know it's a Dalek to begin with. All you see is a glowing blue light, and then the Doctor introduces himself, and then that gets the Dalek activated, because up until then they hadn't been able to get it to talk. And as soon as the Dalek recognised that it was in the same room as the Doctor, it starts going absolutely ape. And that is it's just seeing the Doctor's genuine horror and fear as he realises he's locked in the same room as a Dalek. It really it
Yes, he's
communicates
banging on
to
the
the
doors,
audience,
pleading to be let out, and the
communicates
Dalek
to
is
the
screaming to
audience.
exterminate him, and you can feel the tension in that room.
Yeah, it really kind of gets. It lets new audiences know that we should we should respect this thing, and we should understand that it is absolutely terrifying to be anywhere close to, let alone locked in the same room as. And you can, it's I don't know, it's kind of funny seeing
Definitely.
how the first Doctor reacts to Daleks to the ninth Doctor. The first Doctor is kind of confused and bemused by them, and just kind of goes along with whatever's happening, and kind of slowly figures out that they suck and should probably be stopped. With the ninth Doctor, who alternates between wanting to run away and kill them on sight.
Oh yeah, you can tell Eccleston's Doctor has been through some stuff. I think even there's a point where he tries to torture it as well, using the same rod that Van Staten's men had been using.
I think it's quite a decent moment where he starts kind of gloating at it, because obviously it makes him look like an absolute psycho, but you can understand why he would feel that way once he realises that the Dalek is helpless and the last one, and that it is absolutely pathetic. You can forgive him for kind of gloating over this menace that can't even shoot. Somehow Rose touches it, and because she's a time traveller, that starts it being able to repair itself, which doesn't quite make sense. But
that's a really weird aspect of Dalek technology that was never mentioned before. It can somehow absorb biological matter from
travel.
I thought it was time travel. No, I thought it's because it was able to.
No, I
take a copy
I think
of her
you're
cells.
right. I think
and
you're
so
right, because then it starts being a bit more human towards the end. Again,
it
that's
sort of
pretty
hybridizes
antithetical. That's pretty antithetical to the whole Dalek, thing.
Well, that's why it wanted to kill itself near the end.
Yes, but why would they give themselves that kind of ability?
I'm assuming that it would allow them to be touched by another Dalek or something, or transferring of material. And I'm guessing there's just no what's the word? No sort of fail-safes to keep a non-Dalek from doing it, and so it's more along the lines of any biological matter will do, especially because it's one of those generic foot soldier Daleks. So as long as it's able to repair itself and keep on fighting, it's fine. It's like why, during some of the later plots and stuff, humans were turned into Daleks. And so they were being used as the foot soldiers because they were expendable. And frankly, because they knew that they were part human and hated themselves, they sort of used that anger to their advantage.
Yeah, if they couldn't get the permission to use the Daleks for that episode, they were going to use Cybermen, which makes a lot more sense now with the whole turning humans into Daleks type thing.
That would be creepy as hell.
Oh, yeah.
I really didn't like the way they reintroduced the Daleks in the alternate universe thing.
You mean Cybermen?
Yeah, yes, Daleks, Cybermen. Shoot! Wow.
They both occupy those kind of top levels on the kind of Doctor Who pantheon of baddies.
Oh, yeah. You can't really... yeah.
I didn't mind it being like an actual parallel universe, because that parallels the fact that the original Cybermen came from a rogue twin planet of Earth. Of course, they as soon as they came back like a second time, I was just kind of like, okay, cool, can we have the Prime timeline Cybermen back, please?
I kind of like that the Prime ones looked like the...
Yeah, I really don't like corporate... I don't like Cybermen with corporate logos on them. It just bugs me. I don't like them having like the Cybus Industries logo on their chest. We're back to Prime timeline Cybermen now, but they've got like super speed or some... Oh wait, no, hang about. That was... Okay, so in Matt Smith's run, they got super speed, like super flash speed powers somehow, and they could do the whole, 2000 speed up, slow down. Not 2000, 300. Very different numbers.
Oh, God.
And now the Master has used them. The Master has now used them to take over zombie Time Lords.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
The zombie aspect of it just feels silly.
Thanks,
it completely removes the initial horror. It's like the same gripe I had with making Daleks move quickly. They're supposed to be slow. They're supposed to be inevitable. That's one thing I did like from the alternate universe ones, is that they had that very distinctive sound when they walked, and so they just slowly marched toward you. That was scary as hell. They definitely worked well on the horror side of things. And, oh Christ, I think at one point they gave them jetpacks. I'm thinking, no.
Did they?
Oh,
They probably did.
That's why they gave them jetpacks or something. Or flight or some rubbish.
Probably. It would make sense for them to have like a purpose-built like paratrooper variant or some... I think little tangent here. I think Cybermen have been taken massively off course from what they were originally. If you watch The 10th Planet, their entire motivation is to make all of humanity like them, not out of some kind of Borgian desire to kind of assimilate all cultures and individuality into one hive mind entity, but to improve everyone's standards of living. The Cybermen originally were doing all of this for our own good, because they couldn't conceive of anyone wanting to live a fallible, mortal existence full of emotion and pain. And
I think you explained it to me really good by mentioning that Daleks were the stand-in for the Nazis, Cybermen were the stand-in for communism.
Yeah. I don't know if that last one, the Cybermen thing, was intentional or not. I haven't seen any interviews where they confirm this, but it kind of fits. I think it fits. In the 10th Planet, the Cybermen just can't... It's not that they're evil, they just have a completely different view of morality. And I think they've kind of made them a bit too much like... A bit too much, kind of like the Borg, I guess. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I just don't like how they're being portrayed. I think they're a bit too space empire-y.
Yeah. Then again, that was kind of the way they did it in the sort of the later classic Doctor Who.
You're
right.
Always
like some sort of Cyberman empire, and they always had their space armadas.
The issue here is that something in the past has bugged me. I can't remember exactly what has bugged me, so just completely disregard everything I just said about that, because if I can't explain or justify my feelings on the subject, then they're clearly invalid. So that was the prattlings of a fool.
Oh yeah, this is definitely going into the recording. This ain't being cut. But I know what you mean, though. I like their
Carmen Ranger
original way
suffers
of
from
doing things
brain
before they
soup.
became militant.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Again, I'm an idiot, so don't pay attention to me. Just that was like 5 minutes of your time wasted, dear listener. You're welcome. No, it wasn't wasted. You got to listen to my
Congratulations, you've
dulcet
wasted
tones.
5 minutes of your life. If you want those 5 minutes back, please email spandexpowerarmor@gmail.com.
You know what Daleks used to have to fly around? They used to have little platforms that would fly for them.
So that kind of makes sense. I mean, it's a vehicle. A vehicle's fine because then in order to get you, they have to exit the vehicle. Then they have to chase you through the buildings. That's where it gets scary.
Yeah, Daleks, you can run away from a Dalek, but you cannot run away from the Daleks.
Yeah, there's something inevitable about them. You can run, you can hide.
You can reach the other side of the rainbow.
You can try and resist them, but eventually they will, catch you unawares and kill you.
Yeah, I think they should do a Dalek TV series. I think now is the time to do a Dalek TV series, like Terry Nation always wanted to do, and just have it set during one of the many Dalek wars between Daleks and the whatever human empire is at the time. They mention them more often
cool.
in the audio stuff, but they are seen partially in the classic series. Like I never remember Dalek episode titles because after a while it was always just the something of the Daleks, the this of the Daleks, the that of the Daleks. So Planet of the Daleks, Power of the Daleks, Terror of the Daleks, Genesis of the Daleks, Revelation of the Daleks, blah blah blah. This is the Fifth Doctor Davros episode. I think that takes place either during or just after one of the Dalek wars. And then the second Fourth Doctor Davros episode takes place during a lull between Dalek wars because the Daleks are locked in a stalemate with the Movellans, which is a race of androids, and because they were so logical, they were locked in an eternal stalemate because they just couldn't out-plan one another because they'd always predict and counter perfectly.
I can totally see that for a spin-off series of some human empire versus the Daleks. Get rid of the Doctor. It's sort of like Torchwood, except it is a serious sci-fi thing of humans versus Daleks. You can add a really good story arc in that.
Yeah, and you could flesh out the world. I mean, obviously, you could probably have some other characters drop by. I mean, I don't know. I think it would be neat. I mean, hell, have some Silurians in there. That's something I really wish we'd see in like some future of humanity where the Silurians and the Sea Devils finally get to rejoin the surface world.
Yeah, that would be cool. Sort of like get your own little federation kind of thing.
Yeah, oh no, I just want to recreate Star Trek in Doctor Who.
You do! Let's bring in the Raxacorico-Falpatorians while we're at it.
No. Screw them. Make it like a
cool.
No. Yes, they are, but not what I want at the moment. Just make like a solar system alliance because you got Venusians, you've got
the Ice Warriors as well. Yeah.
The Ice Warriors on Mars, yeah. Yeah, no, just have a little kind of space union for our solar system. That would be pretty neet. Oh, we'll never get it though.
I can dig that.
We'll never get it.
That sounds cool.
Yes, and as such, they will never do it because it sounds cool. Still, I suppose I can't complain. I don't pay my license fee, so I don't have any say in this.
You're before you start calling the police, prepare to be
before you start calling the police, listeners, that's completely legal. You can opt out to not pay the license fee. It's just that the BBC will never stop hounding you for the end of your days if you do.
That just reminds me of a skit out of The Young Ones in the 80s, where in order to avoid paying the license fee, they get Vivian to eat the TV. And then the guy eventually breaks into the house to prove it, and you just see the power lead sticking out of his mouth. And he implies that this is something that people do all the time. Eat the telly. Yeah, you're not safe.
Oi, mate, you got a license for that telly.
Like being a toaster.
We've really got off topic on Daleks. We should just do a whole episode on Doctor Who in general, because we've got a lot to talk about. I have a lot to talk about.
Well, what were we just talking about before this massive tangent? Fanning about in a cave. I think at that point we are now finished with this little arc, I guess. I mean, it was fun. I enjoyed it. It was nice to see the original Dalek episode. There are some really cool elements to it, but there's just a lot about fannying about in caves.
That's the nature of the beast, though, as I said. It's just how you do.
So, if you've enjoyed this, if you've also watched the original run with the Daleks, or if you would like to just discuss it with someone. If you want to see what it's like, please hit us up on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. Yeah, I mean, we've differed greatly from our usual slog with Japanese stuff, but hey, Doctor Who is still pretty culturally significant. Everyone seems to be aware of it. And, Daleks, they're pretty cool. They are the staple bad guy. Do you have any opinions on it? Do you like the old stuff? Do you like the stuff they've done with the new Daleks? Just engage with us, because, yeah, this is a great big pot of discussion, and if we have some inputs from the outside world, it's not just going to be Mr. Carmen Ranger here complaining about New Who.
Yeah, I'd just like to use these last few seconds of the podcast to say that Reiwa era Doctor Who sucks, Showa era forever.
Oh, there is no escape from the Showa.